A pandemic is a terrible thing to waste. Many people I know are already complaining about the interruption of the coronavirus. Life seems on hold. Classes have gone virtual or gone away. It feels like we're not making progress. But really, that's totally up to us. I don't mean to sound flippant during this pandemic when many are facing self-quarantines. I just believe that if we handle this interruption well, we might be surprised by what can be accomplished that would have never happened during our normal busy routines. Did you know that Isaac Newton was a college student during the Great Plague of London in 1665? Although it would take another 200 years before doctors knew what caused it, folks had sense enough to send the students home to practice social distancing. And that's when the magic happened. Cambridge sent students home, so Newton returned to Woolsthorpe Manor, the family estate, about 60 miles northwest of the campus. And without his teachers to guide him, Newton flourished. The year he spent away was later referred to as his Annus Mirabilis, the Year of Wonders. First of all, he continued working on math problems on his own that he'd begun at Cambridge University. And believe it or not, the papers he wrote became the creation of calculus. Second, he acquired some prisms and began experimenting with them in his room, even boring a hole in his shutters so only a small beam of light could shine through. And from his exploration emerged his theories on optics. And third, outside of his window was an apple tree. Yes, the apple tree we've all heard about. And while parts of the narrative are urban legend, his assistant confirmed much of it's true. It was while sitting under that tree an apple fell which launched his thinking. The same power of gravity which made an apple fall to the ground was not limited to a certain distance from the earth to a tree, but must extend much farther than was usually thought. Why not as high as the moon, he said to himself. And from this apple, Newton developed his theory on the law of gravity and his laws of motion. So let's talk about what we learned from Isaac Newton. Back in London, a fourth of the population would die of the plague between 1665 and 1666. It's one of many outbreaks during the 400 years that the Black Plague ravaged Europe. But today, we've all benefited from that outbreak. Isaac Newton returned to Cambridge in 1667 with his theories in hand. And within 6 months, he was made a fellow. 2 years later, he became a professor. Not bad for a 20-something. And we've all been improved by his time alone during a pandemic. So what could you do during this time of social distancing? Well, the concept is so simple, it eludes us. It was actually because Isaac Newton couldn't stay busy with his normal work that he made some of the most important discoveries. A big interruption became a big introduction to new discoveries and advantages. But he had to choose to make his problem a possibility, to make his obstacles opportunities. He had to invest in time, not waste it. The stumbling block to his education became a stepping stone for new learning. So how did he turn his life in his favor? Well, number one, he had time, silence, and solitude to muse and to create. I think most people run from solitude. We're conditioned to put our earplugs in and make noise, turn the radio on, drown out the boredom. And while there's nothing wrong with this, it frequently prevents original thinking. Neuroscientists tell us that it's during times of boredom that our brains develop empathy and creativity. Fortunately, Isaac Newton had no video games or television in which to squander time. With nothing and no one consuming his time, he had time to imagine and come up with some timeless ideas. 2, he had ownership of his day to pursue what interested him. When no one is around to tell us what to do, we ought to experience our greatest moments. We own those moments. Isaac Newton pursued the things he wanted when he wanted. He didn't squander his freedom. I'm sure he took time for fun, but his tasks were fun because he was in charge of them. Call it metacognition. Ownership creates initiative. Good things can happen when we have autonomy. We can master a passion. And 3, he had margin to observe and to experiment. A college student's life is usually full. A combination of classes, clubs, studies, and sports leaves little margin in the week. Newton's life came to a halt, just like yours and mine, during the pandemic. And he leveraged his days experimenting with light, exploring math equations, and writing new theories about how the world works. And it paid off. With brain bandwidth to observe and investigate, he was promoted twice in 3 years. Today, I am so grateful that Isaac Newton had some spare time. So what will you do with yours? By the way, if you'd like 8 conversation starters for you and your kids at home, go to growingleaders.com/homechats. That's growingleaders.com/homechats.